This film is presented to students by Public Service Company of New Hampshire, your good citizen electric company. Public service is made up of people, 1,300 of your friends and neighbors. It is also made up of equipment such as these huge generating stations powered by the atom, by coal and oil, and by falling water. Public service is, therefore, people and equipment working together to provide the electric power of growing and progressive New Hampshire needs.
I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession.
Driven from their promised land by Roman legions and Muslim warriors, the children of Israel are for thousands of years a people without a homeland. At the start of the 20th century, the land of Canaan, now called Palestine, is part of the Ottoman Empire. And ancient Jerusalem, where the Wailing Wall from Solomon's Temple still stands, is under Turkish rule. In 1917, British troops occupy the city. World War I is recarving the map of Europe and reshaping the face of the Middle East. When peace comes, England is given a mandate to rule the region and carry out the Balfour Declaration that promises Jews a homeland in Palestine. The declaration is hailed by Jewish nationalist leaders like Chaim Weizmann, as its author, Sir Arthur Balfour, comes to Jerusalem in 1920. The 500,000 Arabs living in Palestine want no part of the new immigrants. But led by men like David Ben-Gurion, the Jewish settlers come. A soldier in the British Army during World War I, Ben-Gurion returns with his wife to help the immigrants reclaim their promised land. During the 1920s, 70,000 Jews enter Palestine, working with their hands as their ancestors had done 2,000 years before. Wherever a collective farm called a kibbutz is established, fences and towers rise too, for Arab resentment sometimes speaks through the voice of violence. A new threat, Adolf Hitler, and a new nightmare for the Jewish people. The 1930s and World War II bring persecution, concentration camps, and death to millions of men, women, and children in the Third Reich. Those who can flee. As many as 60,000 a month are granted asylum in Palestine. Soon the number of refugees is so great that British officials must enforce strict immigration quotas. Still they come. Some get through, others do not. Many times the refugees are wounded as the British intercept outlaw ships. Instead of freedom in the promised land, the Jewish immigrants are exiled to internment camps on Cyprus and Malta. With the British mandate ending in 1948, David Ben-Gurion calls Jewish leaders together to propose bold, decisive action. Golda Meir, a former American schoolteacher from Milwaukee, is among the political figures who hear and support Ben-Gurion's decision to proclaim the independence of Israel. It is a fateful decision, fraught with danger. May 14th, 1948, Chaim Weizmann sees half a century of dreams and hopes come true. The so-called Arab League vows to annihilate the infant nation. King Farouk of Egypt pledges his support, and Abdullah of Jordan directs his British-trained and equipped army to take up battle positions on the Israeli border. Syria and Lebanon also mobilize. Israel stands alone. And yet the Arab invaders are hurled back on all fronts, and Israel actually expands her territory by 50%. Within a month, the United Nations is able to negotiate a ceasefire. In 1954, Gamal Abdel Nasser seizes power in Egypt and speaks at first of living in peace and harmony with all nations in the Middle East.
The Egyptian people, faithful to its traditional love for peace and freedom, believes also in the right for all the peoples of the world to live freely and peacefully. We shall do our best to help secure peace, not only in our part of the world, but also contribute in safeguarding worldly peace and security.
But Nasser's mood soon changes, and Cairo streets echo to the military cadence of marching feet. Backed by Russian advisors and equipment, Nasser proclaims a new Muslim crusade to drive Israel into the sea. In November 1956, fighting erupts on the Egyptian-Israeli border. Within a week, England and France intervene on the Israeli side, hoping to keep open the strategic Suez Canal. Nasser suffers a crushing defeat. In retaliation, he clogs the Suez Canal with sunken ships. The United Nations sends Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld to meet with David Ben-Gurion and persuade Israeli, British, and French troops to lay down their arms. In Cairo, Nasser agrees to allow peacekeeping forces on Egyptian soil. And for the second time in 8 years, UN truce teams take up positions on the Israeli-Egyptian border. Claiming an Egyptian victory, Nasser is compared to Saladin, the great Muslim warrior who captured Jerusalem during the Crusades. But in fact, Israel again has expanded her borders at Egypt's expense. And the seeds are sown for a third holy war. In June 1967, Israeli aircraft strike against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan in retaliation for commando raids on border towns. In 6 days, the armies of the 3 Arab allies are put to rout as Israeli armored columns reach the east bank of the Suez Canal. General Moshe Dayan wins new military acclaim as the architect of the spectacular victory in the Lightning War. Captured Russian equipment stands a stark testimony to the extent of the military disaster. In 1970, Gamal Nasser is dead, and millions of Egyptians mourn their fallen leader. Alexei Kosygin comes to Cairo to honor the memory of a friend and ally who provided Russia with a foothold in the Middle East. The embattled nation strikes back, and soon armored tanks are pushing deep into Syria and advancing to within 30 miles of the capital city of Damascus. Despite the awesome accuracy of the Russian-made missiles, Israeli Phantom jets penetrate enemy skies and strike against strategic targets in Egypt and Syria. As the fighting goes on, allies of the Arab nations send reinforcements and impose oil embargoes against nations, including the United States, friendly to the Israeli cause. In search of a ceasefire and hopefully a lasting peace, President Nixon sends Secretary of State Henry Kissinger on a diplomatic mission to Moscow. The delicate negotiations go on for 2 weeks. Finally, the United Nations Security Council receives a joint Soviet-U.S. ceasefire resolution that triggers an angry exchange between Russia's Yakub Malik and Communist China's Guanhua Zhao.
Это изоляция Китая в Совете Безопасности. Никто его не поддержал в этом.
The Chinese delegate accuses Malik of being a hypocrite whose country pretends to side with the Arabs while helping Israel. And he says China will not vote on the ceasefire resolution.
The Council will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document S/11039. Will all those in favour please raise their hands? The result of the voting is as follows. Those in favour, 14. Against, none. Abstentions, none. One member did not participate in the vote. Accordingly, the draft resolution is adopted.
And so, for the 4th time in 25 years, peacekeeping forces from the United Nations take up their positions in the Middle East. And a new chapter is written in an old story of the promised land that continues to be a troubled land.
This film has been presented by Public Service Company of New Hampshire. As an investor-owned, tax-paying electric company, public service is truly a vital part of our great free enterprise system.